Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Hope everybody's having a really good night. Tonight we're going to be checking out the new SPL PQ from Brainworx from Plugin Alliance. It just came out today. It's been in beta for a while, so actually I've had access to this for a while. I've been holding off trying it out, but it has been out for a little bit, but it officially got launched today. So yeah, we're going to be playing around with this. Just a quick rundown of kind of what the whole purpose of the stream is. If you're new here, you haven't been here before, the whole purpose of the stream is for me to try this out in real time, kind of like a live discovery process. I love trying out new software. I love seeing what's available and what's coming out. There's so much cool stuff coming out all the time, and I love playing with it, and I love seeing what it can do. I love working in the digital environment. I love all the creativity that's available there. I've been completely in the box for several years now, and I love that workflow. Not that I don't love the analog workflow, I love that as well, but just where I'm at and how I work these days, completely in the box, and I'm looking for tools that really expand on that capacity and on that workflow. We're not trying out something tonight that's pretty crazy on that front, but we're trying out something that's a pretty important tool in the toolbox, and that's EQ. Arguably the most important tool that an engineer has is EQ. And tonight we're checking out, the new PQ Mastering Equalizer from SPL. Not to be mistaken with the PQ. I think a lot of people are going to think this is just an update from the PQ. Totally different beast. The PQ is a passive equalizer. This is a full 5-band parametric equalizer, so it's a different thing. But yeah, I kind of thought, just because it is a parametric equalizer and Brainworx just released the AMEK 250 there not too long ago, maybe a month ago, I thought maybe it'd be cool to shoot this out against the AMEK 250. So yeah, let's talk about SPL first. SPL's been around since the mid-80s. They're a German company, and they make really great high-end analog equipment that's pretty innovative. They do a lot of innovative stuff, and that's kind of been part of their mentality from the get-go. So just as I'm looking to have a creative, innovative workflow in the digital domain, SPL is trying to do the same thing in the analog domain. They're trying to push on the boundaries of what analog equipment can do. I find that super cool. They've made some pretty iconic pieces of gear over the years. Their Vitalizer, the Tube Vitalizer, pretty iconic piece of equipment. The Transient Designer, their mastering equipment. I mean, that's what this EQ is based off their 5-band parametric mastering EQ. Super high quality stuff. They work with this 120 volts DC technology, which really improves the headroom and the performance of their equipment. And it's interesting, you don't really see any other companies kind of going after that or doing something similar. Yeah, they make some really cool hardware, and I'm pretty sure they were one of the first, if not the first, company that Brainworx started modeling when Brainworx started modeling plugins. And yeah, let's talk about Brainworx for a minute. Brainworx is one of my favorite plugin developers because they really get the digital workflow, and they're really pushing on that with their plugins, and they do some really cool stuff. So I'm always excited when Brainworx stuff comes out, because they're really at the forefront in my opinion on digital workflow, like what people want available to them in the digital domain. They really provide that. They do a lot of great stuff, and the plugins always sound great. They work great. They're fun to use. They're generally low CPU usage, so you can use a lot of them, and it feels like they're a company that really listens to what their users want. Yeah, we're just gonna try this 5-band EQ out on some stereo mixes tonight. That's what we're gonna do, and see how the thing sounds. We'll see if we can shoot it out a bit with another parametric EQ that they just launched, which is the AMEK 250. So that should be pretty fun. All right, overview. SPL PQ Mastering Equalizer, 5-band parametric EQ. And it's kind of got a cool feature from what I've ever understand. I've never tried the hardware out of this, so I have no idea what the actual thing sounds like. So we're just going to be judging on how it sounds in here. And really, that's all that matters to me. It does have a pretty cool feature in that it can switch and apparently this is pretty unique to the analog world. It can switch between a constant Q and a proportional Q, which is something as a digital user I can do on a lot of digital EQs. So I take for granted. So maybe in the hardware world, this is something that's really unique. So that's kind of interesting. It's a mastering grade EQ, so built to the highest spec. And I mean, I feel like all of SPL stuff, anything that I've used from them in the hardware world has felt incredible to use and seems impeccably built. So it just seems like a standard that they have. We're gonna just start digging into this thing. I have a bit of a checklist that I work through on all plugins before I even dig in. There's things I want to know. The nerd in me has got to know, because I am all about digital workflow, and there's things that are really important to me when I'm trying out new tools and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And if it's something that I'm going to integrate into my workflow, I kind of want to know that whether or not it has these things even before I dig in. What does that checklist consist of? First off is the GUI, the user interface. How does it look? How does this thing look? I know that doesn't matter. If it doesn't sound good, that's okay, but you want to be inspired by your plugins, and you want to be inspired by your tools, and how they look affects that. I think it really affects that. So how does this thing look? Well, it looks great. It looks like the hardware. SPL's got a really great design. They look really slick, and this plugin looks slick. It looks exactly like the hardware. If you go and look at the hardware, it looks exactly like it. And I just know some of these things just from being a real heavy-duty Brainworx user, and I know their plugins really, really well. So I can just tell that I'm going to get some options here. I get the options of the fold-out on the GUI. All this stuff down here, this is only available in the digital domain. This does not actually exist on the hardware. This would be what the hardware actually looks like. And this is with all the extra digital features. So just right there, that separates Brainworx. They're like, okay, well, this is what the hardware does. How can I make it more interesting for digital users? What do they need in the box? What are things that don't happen in the analog domain on this gear that can happen in the digital domain? And they give you a whole bunch of extra goodies, which we'll get to. It's all pretty standard stuff on their things. But yeah, the plugin looks great. And it even says here, you got some interface options. So we can make this thing red, we can make it black, and we can make it all black. And then I know we can resize it, which would be the next thing on my checklist. Can I make this thing bigger or smaller? So other things that are important to me, do I have AB? Can I AB things easily? And do I have undo and redo? And boom, right here, we have our undo and our redo. And then right beside it, I don't just have an AB, I have an ABCD. So you get 4 levels of that. That stuff's awesome to me. Other things that are up here, the virtual gain. So you can actually turn up the noise floor that exists in the hardware. It defaults to off. I don't know many people that do work with the noise on. I actually like the noise on when I use Brainworx stuff. I use a lot of their channel strips, and I like leaving the noise on. I kind of find it adds a little bit of mojo to things. That's just my personal preference. And then you get a solo mid and a solo side. What else do we have here? Well, it's a 5-band EQ. This might be my only knock against the SPL EQs. I find them a little hard to follow. The pass EQ, I found that the layout of that really unintuitive. I always found I had to think for a minute on it, and I kind of feel like I'm going to have to think for a minute on this thing. So yeah, we've got 5 bands. There's some overlap in the bands here. The low band goes from 10 hertz to 330. Low mid frequency goes from 33 hertz up to 1K. The mid frequency goes from 128 to 4K. Mid high frequency goes from 310 to 10K. And then we got 760 to 24K on the top band. And they're all bell curves. There's no shelves on this thing. It's all bell curves. You can turn the bands off individually, which is great. And then the switch here on beside it is for the Q. It defaults to constant Q, and then you can pop it into a proportional Q. What else do we have? We got the on off. I'm pretty sure that's the bypass for the entire unit. And then this is something that I didn't actually know existed on the hardware. I thought this was a software only feature, but this actually exists in the hardware. You can set up an auto bypass, so you can AB without having to press the bypass. I mean, that alone is a really cool feature. The fact that exists on their actual hardware unit, I think is pretty cool. Then we get into all the digital goodies that they give us. So what do we get extra? Well, we get some filters. We get a high pass filter and a low pass filter. I'm guessing it's a 12 dB slope. I didn't find that in the manual, what the high pass and low pass slopes were, the octave slopes, but I'm gonna guess it's 12 dBs. That's pretty standard. We have our input gain and our output gain, and sadly, very sadly, we don't have our input and output meters on the same side. I wish the input and the output gain and the input and the output meters lived exactly beside each other. I don't want to have to look way over here and then look way over there. I want them to be beside each other. That would be great. And then we get into their TMT stuff, their tolerance modeling technology, which is a proprietary thing to Brainworx, which is really cool. They model the non-linear differences of analog equipment and try and get you a little bit of that non-linear stuff happening in the digital world. Digital world's pretty strict ones and zeros. In the analog world, you can buy 2 of the same guitars and they play radically differently. You can buy 2 of the same EQs and they sound really differently. So what Brainworx has done is they've figured out what those tolerances are in the analog equipment, in the actual equipment used to build these units. and figured out what those specs are and kind of built it up. So you can actually have up to 20 different channels of this EQ in the digital domain, which is phenomenal. I think that's really cool, and it does make a difference. I've found over my time of using this stuff, having the TMT stuff out, which it's probably been out for 7 or 8 years now, the TMT stuff, and it's cool. It adds a little bit of vibe, it adds a little bit of mojo, and you can switch it in and out. You can be in this analog TMT world, or you can be in a straight digital world where the channels are exactly matched. Really up to you. So again, they give you the option. They don't force the analog modeling on you. Other features we've got here, we've got some mid-side, which is also very much, Brainworx has been at the forefront of that. And then we get the channel link, so we can unlink, and we get auto listen, so which again has always been a feature of the Brainworx stuff. A couple other things that we have here, THD, so their harmonic drive. We can drive the unit if we want to, get a little bit of saturation happening, which is awesome. And then we have the mono maker, which goes from 20 hertz up to 2K. And this is something I actually use all the time. For those of you that are not familiar with how the mono maker works, it's just monoing the frequencies below the cutoff. So if we've got this set at 200 hertz, everything from 200 hertz down is going to be in mono. And then obviously they always have their stereo width, which is great. You can just pop it in, and the stereo width sounds great on all of their plugins. It does look like we're running a little bit of latency, 32 samples. So we do have a little bit of oversampling happening. So maybe that's helping us handling a little bit of frequency cramping. They're doing some oversampling so that we can extend the frequency range in the digital domain. This is a session that's at 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. Hopefully the oversampling is at least 1 times that. So we're extending our range up to 96 kilohertz in the digital domain. Hopefully that's what's happening with the oversample. Only thing that I'm not seeing on this thing that I would love to see that's on my checklist is some gain match. I love auto gain on everything, and I really love it on EQ. I think it's an underused feature on EQ, and there's only a few of them that do it, and I wish all of them did. I wish auto gain was on everything. I think you're a far more aggressive engineer, mixer, producer, whatever you want to be doing if you're hearing in context, and auto gain on EQ is great, and I really wish they had some of that. Oh, and a mix knob. We don't have a mix knob. You can't run this thing in parallel. That'd be kind of cool if it did. I don't really expect EQs to have a mix knob, but it'd be kind of cool if you could just instantly run this in parallel. That way you could dial up something a little bit more extreme and see what happens. One thing I should have covered on this thing is that they have a quarter gain switch. We have a 20 dB gain on the cut and the boost by default, but you can set this to a quarter gain and really get into more finite control, which is amazing for mastering. If you're not in that mode, you're gonna half step. EQ. In the digital domain, we run into what's called frequency cramping because of the Nyquist theorem and because of whatever our cutoff frequency is there in that. We're at 24-bit 48K session here, so the top end of the spectrum that we can push up to is 48 kilohertz. And with some oversampling, we're hopefully going to be pushed up to 96K. I'm not going to go into the details of what frequency cramping is. I will try and post a link to that in the YouTube video, but you do run into frequency cramping. So when I'm trying out EQs in the digital domain, the first thing I go to is the top end, because I want to hear how the top end reacts, because that's where you can really hear the quality of a digital EQ. In the analog domain, you have infinite. There's no frequency cutoff. It's infinite. In the digital domain, we do have a cutoff, and that's why we run into what's called frequency cramping. So yeah, I always start off on the top end. So we're going to get up in the top end, and then we're going to go to the bottom end, because that's also, especially from a mastering standpoint, those are generally the two areas that I'm tugging on the most. So let's try this out. Looks like we default to a 1.5 Q. We can go down to 0.6 all the way up to 15. So you can get pretty tight with this thing. That's awesome. Here we go. A little higher just because those cymbals will get a little brash right off the bat, and I think that's more the mix than the EQ. So let's just push 20 and see what we get.
We're so much older than we used to be.
10 dBs at 20K. I mean, we're pushing a lot of volume here. Put it to 1.5. Okay, so we're pushing some 18K, 1.5, 5 dBs. This is in, out. So this is maybe a harder song. Like there's a lot of saturation on these cymbals on this track, so I do feel like we're getting some of the brashness out right off the bat, but the air that we're getting above that feels really nice to me. Again, we probably in a real world mastering application, I would not be pushing 5 dBs, obviously. We're pushing a lot less. We'll try a little more conservative here. This is 2 dBs. Bypass. Really nice. Let's pump that back up and let's try the proportional cue. So you can the constant cue, you can just feel it. I wish I could quickly and easily explain the difference between the cues for you, but the constant cue, we're just gonna have a little bit more on the left and the right of that signal coming up, and that overall is going to be happening as we increase the gain. With the proportional cue, it's going to focus a little bit more as we add the gain, and you can kind of hear that happen when we switch between the two. So the constant cue almost feels like broader, and then proportional cue, it just sounds like we're getting more focus. So I'll switch them again here. Instantly on the top end, I prefer the proportional cue because it's not, at this frequency anyways, it's not grabbing all that stuff in the 8-10K on the cymbals, which can really get a bit brash. Let's try some cutting. And we'll pop in the proportional cue. So yeah, constant cue. See, we really lose a lot of top end. When we go to the proportional, you just get a little bit more of that back. Not much. I mean, I'm cutting 6 dBs here, let's be honest. That's a pretty bold move. Let's push the 24K actually. So we'll push the 24K. Let's try it at the tighter settings.
got you, babe. Yeah.
And obviously the proportional doesn't get as tight on the Q as the parametric does. We get a Q of 15 on the constant, or sorry, as the constant does. Constant goes to 15 and the parametric, or the proportional, holy. Let me start there again. So the proportional Q we get more, we don't get as tight of a Q. On the constant Q we get a 15 and 6 on the proportional. So pretty cool that you're kind of getting, you're getting two really different tones, textures in here, which is great. Okay, let's hear how the bottom end sounds. So yeah, for boosts, I'm really liking this proportional, and I kind of feel like for the cuts, I would go with the constant because you can just get really tight.
I got you, babe.
Sounds really nice. And it's kind of got that familiar, I mean, I use the iron plugin a lot. It's got a bit of that. I mean, SPL, I guess Mojo do it. Sounds really polished, I guess would be the word I would use here. It's transparent, but not transparent. It's not clinical by any stretch, but it is leans more on the transparent side. It feels polished, like musically polished, I guess would be the word that I would use. All right, let's move on to the low mid.
With your taste still on my mouth. We're so much older than we used to be, but your eyes, they stay young.
Proportional Q in.
Your eyes, they stay young. Wow.
Yeah, I sure like the proportional on the boosts. Feels great. Mid frequency.
We weathered years of falling apart. Lord knows we almost put out that spark, but here we are, like we used to be. A love that tries to stay young.
Oh, I think sweeping through here, I probably would prefer the constant Q. I do love boosting anywhere from 600 to 800 on a master, sometimes 500. I really like that. I find it gives a lot of power and kind of just brings things closer to you. Constant sounds really nice in here.
I got you, babe.
The proportional sounds great too. Who am I kidding?
Yeah, I got you, babe.
Feels really nice. Alright. And now for jetted mid-highs. Like you can really hear what I'm talking about in these frequencies, I feel. Well, just because we can really hear these frequencies, but there's like a polished sound here. Very polished, but very, yeah, clean, but not clinical. Musical, but not overly musical. It's like a polish. I don't know. I wish I had better words here. Okay. And let's check out our filters. Pretty just clean sounding, probably 12 dB per octave. Actually, maybe 18 dBs. This gets pretty steep pretty quick. Filters feel like filters. Nice and clean, again, not clinical. And then of course we got our mono maker. To 2K. And our Stere Width. Pretty standard stuff on Brainworx stuff, so nothing crazy there. And then let's so we've cranked the THD here, the saturation. Really nice subtle saturation. You can just kind of feel the whole thing tighten up. I always find there, like, I technically understand why they do it this way with their THD. I kind of wish they simplified the drive thing, how it works. Like, but it seems like overly complicated language to me to do this, but so THD in, THD out. And obviously I'm pushing it just so we can hear it, but even pushed, it sounds really nice. Just like a subtle tightening up of the things, subtle saturation. Maybe we'll just do a bit of a mock-up master on this track. Just some very basic common moves, and we can see how that feels in and out, and then we can try it with the TMT stuff and see how that works. So what would we do here? I don't think I'd be pushing much around those cymbals on here. I would push some I would push some just air, push some top.
In the night when you come around with your taste still on my
A little bit of this sounds nice.
We're so much older than we used to be, but your eyes, they stay young, wild and free. But your eyes, they stay young, wild and free. Let's let the rough side.
For mastering, I always go for the top first. I find that's a really great place to get before you try and get the rest of your.
Let's let the rough side drain, 'cause I got you, babe. got you, babe.
I feel like I'm gonna just push on all of this. I don't really care to cut anything on this. For this example anyways, on this song.
Weathered years of falling apart.
See, like right in there, the vocal just pops right forward on us. I love that.
We almost put out that spark, but here we are, like we used to be.
Ooh, somewhere around there sounded good.
Stay young, wild and free. Let's let the rough side drag. Let the rough side drag, dear. Let's let the rough side drag, 'cause I got you, babe.
I guess that'd be an interesting one. We could copy this over and do a full parametric or full proportional versus constant.
Got you, babe.
Okay, let's see what our gain's like.
In the night when you come around, with your taste still on my mouth,
So this is bypassed.
we're so much older than we used to be, but your eyes, they stay young. Wow.
So I'm just pushing things till it feels good to me. I mean, I'm not sure I would use these exact boosts or gains, but I kind of just found frequencies that felt good to me and just pushed on them. So active, bypassed.
Let's let the rough side drag, 'cause I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Yeah, it sounds expensive to me. It sounds polished.
Yes. We weathered years of falling apart.
Sounds great.
Lord knows we almost wow.
We're gonna swap this all to constant just cause why not?
Let's let the rough side.
Proportional. Constant. Proportional. So you can hear the proportional being way more focused
When you come,
and the constant being way broader.
your taste still
I mean, those are also the Q settings we're at. If we were to tighten up the Qs on the constant, we'd have a way more focused boost
they stay
happening
wild and free.
because the Q goes much higher on the constant. So sounds great though. We're gonna try the TMT out. So we're just gonna pop the analog to digital in first. So we're in analog. So now we're in straight digital.
In the night when you come around,
Analog.
with your taste still on my mouth.
Digital.
We're so much older than we used to be.
Analog.
But your eyes,
So there's just a
they stay young.
subtle shift in the width and the depth and the dimension because the phase between the two channels is just going to be a little bit off because that's how analog equipment in the real world works. So where the digital sounds really focused to me, the vocals like boom right there, and then when we pop it into analog, we just get a little bit more width. It feels like it almost softens, which is really cool. Anyways, that's on every Brainworx thing, so I'm not gonna spend too much time here, but let's just try out our handy dandy ABs. So we're on 1 and 2. We're gonna copy and paste here, and we're gonna make these 3 and 4. So just so you can hear quick. 3 and 4.
Wild and free, but your eyes, they stay young.
1 and 2.
Wild and free. Let's let the rough
3 and 4.
side drain.
1 and 2. Like, this is super subtle stuff. It's fun. Just another little bit of a tone knob maybe that you can try out. Let's do a bit of a shootout. I think that'd be fun. I mean, they just released this not too long ago. 5-band parametric EQ, the AMEK 250, also a holy grail of parametric EQs. Let's set up some similar things. I know this isn't necessarily like a new version versus an old version, but these are 2 parametric EQs that Brainworx has released in the last month and a bit. So let's see how they sound and see if we can kind of match them up a little bit. We'll maybe default all our gains to 1.5, or our Qs, sorry. For the sake of the example, we're gonna do 2 dB boosts everywhere, and I guess we'll do a lower cut. I don't know. I just want to hear the whole thing push. So we're gonna do 2 dB boosts everywhere. And then what frequencies are we gonna do? We're gonna do 80, some 300, I think some 700, some 3K, some 16K, or 18K. Let's do 18. So yeah, we're gonna shoot out the 250 versus the PQ, match settings. So here we go. We're starting on the PQ. So it looks like we're getting a little more level out of.
In the night when you come around with your taste still on my mouth.
Is it AMEK?
So much older than we used to be.
A
But
little
your
louder.
eyes, they stay young, wild and free. But your
PQ.
eyes, they stay young, wild and free. Let's let the rough side drain. Let the rough side drain.
AMEK,
Let's let
PQ.
the rough side drain.
So yeah, we are getting a little bit of difference in gain here. That's not super fair.
I got you, babe.
AMEK.
Oh, yes. We weathered years of
AMEK.
falling apart. Lord knows we almost
PQ.
put out that spark. But here we are,
Okay,
like we
interesting.
used to be.
Let's try this out on a different song.
You can go home again. You can go.
So PQ,
Take off the people-pleasing
AMEK.
smile. Show them what you really know.
PQ,
Show them what you really know. 'Cause you can go home again.
AMEK,
You can go.
PQ. Real different flavors. Subtly, but definitely different beasts. I mean, they should be different beasts. They're different pieces of gear. It'd be upsetting if they sounded the same. It'd be really upsetting.
Take off the people-pleasing smile. Show them what you really know.
So PQ,
Show them
AMEK.
you really know.
Let's set this up so that it's constant cues.
Take off
So constant cues, PQ, 250. PQ. So definitely getting a little bit of difference in the volume. 250. PQ. I mean, it's funny. I mean, they're both digital in the digital domain, but if I were to have to use words to describe the difference between the two, is the 250's got a bit more of a vintage vibe to me. It feels like a little bit slower on the transients, and just feels a little bit thicker in a really nice way. And the PQ sounds really modern. Really, really modern. You can really feel it in the bottom end on the 250. It just it's a little gushier on the 250. Not super gushy, but it's a little bit of thickness down there. I mean, we're on the constant cue here, which just sounds really modern to me, really polished, but musical. Definitely on the boosts, I feel like I like the proportional cue better. That felt better to me. This feels a little tighter, a little more focused. Let's try it on one more genre. Yeah, let's try it on something a little more like hip-hoppy or... So we're listening to the PQ right now. $250. PQ. But yeah, it just feels like the AMEK 250. It just kind of feels a little slower. I guess if that would be the way to describe it, it feels a little slower, but that's not in a bad way. It just kind of feels a little more vintage. And the SPL sounds really open and really modern to me. PQ. $250. You can really hear it on the top end on this song. The top just seems open. It almost feels a little too bright on the PQ. But the 250's a little duller. Still really nice though, a little softer. Okay. They both sound good. Let's just recap, I think. The SPL PQ Mastering Equalizer from SPL, modeled by Brainworx for the digital domain. Short answer, this thing sounds really nice. It sounds really modern and polished, which is kind of what I would expect from SPL. Really two different flavors in one EQ with the ability to kind of change how the Q reacts and being able to switch between the constant and the proportional. I think that's really cool. The 5 different bands, lots of overlap. I mean, I just use this quickly in some stereo mixes and stereo masters, but I mean, you got a lot of overlap between these bands, so I don't see you running into any issues. And you got lots of cut and boost, 20 dBs on the regular mode, and then you can swap that into a quarter gain, so you can go 5 dBs, which, to be honest, I would probably, for an EQ like this, I would probably work like that. All the extra goodies the Brainworx gives us, I love the fact that we get all these extra stuff that doesn't exist on the hardware. You get the filters, you get the TMT stuff, which I mean does technically exist on the hardware, and you get mid-side capability, some harmonic distortion, mono maker, stereo width, all great things. Mixed knob would be cool, maybe, because you could do some crazy stuff in parallel and blend it in. Maybe a gain scale. We saw that on the AMEK 250. That would maybe be a cool feature to add, so you could kind of get your curve and see how it sounds as you enhance it or decrease that curve. That would be kind of a cool thing. And I guess the only real functional feature I would love to see would be auto gain. Please give me auto gain. I think that would be awesome. You can really make some radical changes and stay in context and stay grounded, which would be great. But as far as the sonics go, this thing sounds awesome, and I think it sounds what you would think of high-end mastering EQ made by SPL. It sounds really polished, but musical. Doesn't sound technical or clinical. It doesn't sound clinical. It sounds really musical, but polished. Sounds like there's lots of headroom. Brainworx makes great stuff. They do a great job, and obviously SPL wouldn't be working with them if they didn't think it sounded good as well. You can use this in production, you can use this in mix, and you can use this in mastering. There's only 32 samples of latency. I didn't really check out the usage, but I'm gonna guess the usage is pretty low. All the Brainworx stuff is really that's probably why I didn't even think to check it, is that Brainworx stuff is really gentle on usage and sounds great and super functional. They really look after their users, Brainworx, and I really appreciate that. And the shootout between the AMEK 250 and this was really cool. They're two very different flavors, and it's interesting that they would release 2 parametric EQs so close together. Great tools to have in the arsenal. Definitely this sounds more modern to me, and the 250 sounds a little more vintage to me, but both sound really great, and I would use them anywhere. This would live on a 2-bus for a mix for me, no problem, or I would use it on a master, no problem. So yeah, that's going to do it for me, I think. Thanks for hanging out. Whoever's been tuning in, I really appreciate it. And if you're catching this on YouTube and you don't mind hitting subscribe and follow and hitting the old like button as well, that would really help me out. Also, I would be very grateful. I hope you have a great night. Thank you.